years ago, on the last Friday in San Francisco, it was a sunny day, I got my first tattoo. Now, even if you were standing here next to me, you would have no idea what it is and couldn't see it, because if there's any moral to this story, it's that middle-aged people should get really big tattoos because everyone you know needs reading glasses. But what it is an image of an iconic Shure 55 microphone. And it's one image that symbolizes my work, which is to help people hear and be heard. It's an homage to my husband, Tom, who is a sound man and a very accomplished blues harmonica player and plays through this microphone. And our best friends, Elizabeth and Greg, gave us this very microphone, and every New Year's Eve, we massacre karaoke through it. So now I'm going to ask you to turn to somebody sitting near you, preferably somebody that you have yet to meet. And I'm going to ask you to share a story, 90 seconds each, of something that you're wearing or carrying. What I wanted you to see was that the power of story right here didn't come from epic creativity, it came from connectivity. We know about the power of telling stories. I wanted you to experience the power of hearing one. Think about all the content in the stories that you just shared. Each little story contained data, reason, and emotion. And some of our stories contained complex information about love and families and relationships. That's because asking for a story yields great unanticipated truths. By asking for a story, we hear things that we wouldn't normally hear. Our old ways of listening no longer suffice. We need to kick it up. We need to ask for stories. And in order to hear them, we have to ask for them. By asking for and listening to stories, we provide people with the power of being heard. By legitimizing another person's experiences, we provide them with respect. We demonstrate our interest in them. Asking for stories can take us off of our pedestals of authority and place us and our audience on an equal level. And when we listen to many stories, we hear patterns about peoples and incidents and issues, patterns that provide insight and accelerate understanding. Let's go back to the story you just shared with your colleague or the former stranger sitting next to you. It was my hope that you experienced a level of familiarity, that you saw how similar you are. But I also wanted you to see how different you are. We're most often told to probe for commonalities, to find common areas of interest, if not common values. We're told that deep down, everybody is alike, that anywhere you go, people are the same. No, they're not. If they were, why would we go anywhere? And when we do go somewhere new, we usually come back and we talk about what was different and exciting about what we just experienced, not what was exactly the same as our day-to-day lives. It's unlikely that you're going to go home and gush to your friends tonight. Inspirefest was awesome. Everyone I met was exactly like me. We may find comfort and commonality and communion in commonality, but we also crave difference. It's precisely because people are different from us that they excite us and they intrigue us. We're all a delightful combination of universal truths plus particular experiences. Yet we're often admonished to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. And that kind of imagination is to be applauded. Our capacity for that kind of empathy is part of what makes us human. But don't be so quick to empathize. Imagining something from someone else's point of view actually has serious limitations. When we try to put ourselves in someone else's shoes, we fall back on what we know and what we think and what we care about. It's an egocentric exercise that can introduce more error than insight. That's because despite our best intentions, we don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. Our guesses Our assumptions are guesses, and we bring in our biases. Sure, I can assume, but we all know that makes an ass out of you and me. But it is possible to overcome such misinterpretation. If we assume nothing, then perhaps we can learn something. Successfully understanding another person's point of view comes from gently eliciting their perspective, not from taking it. The empathy of our imagination comes best after we listen to a person's story. I've recently gone through a concentrated period of death. In the last 6.5 months, my best friend since I was 15, a very dear friend and my next door neighbor, an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, and my dad all died. If nature unfolds the way it is supposed to, we will experience our parents' deaths. It's a universal experience. But the context and the details are different for every one of us. Even in my own family, my mother, my brother, and I are having completely different experiences of my dad's death and our subsequent grief. My parents were lovingly married for 59 years. My mother's experiencing something I have never experienced. And my brother Jim's relationship with my dad was very different than my relationship with my dad. And the 3 widows in my life are having distinct experiences. I can't go back in time and walk in all of their shoes through their entire lives and their relationships. Despite desiring deep connection, I have to refrain from presumption. But I can ask them for stories about their spouses. Amidst the complexity of grief, I can help them make meaning out of their experiences by telling stories. We can all ask for stories. Ask, tell me about a time. Tell me about your experience. Tell me about a moment. Those words, those little words, uncover tremendous understanding and insight into complicated people and complex topics. It does take courage to open the door to this kind of complexity. But now, more than ever, we need to be that courageous. For 8 years, I was the public affairs director for a large health and social service center in urban Jersey City, New Jersey. When I felt disconnected from our clients, when I was stalled in sharing my passion for the impact we were having, I would go to the market next door and I would buy a box of ice cream sandwiches. And I would go into the waiting room and I would hand out the ice cream sandwiches to the kids who were waiting with their moms to see doctors and nurses. Now I know that I was probably contributing to tooth decay, but the smiles on the faces of those kids really made it seem worth it. And over smiling children and calmer moms, I could inquire, how are you? Tell me about what brought you here today. That Health and Social Service Center also had a teen community center. So I got to spend a lot of time in serious conversations with teenagers about relationships and school and pop culture. And when their curiosity was piqued, the kids would say to me, Thaler, learn me about your life. That expression has always stayed with me. What I realize I love about it is that the teens were placing the onus on themselves. Rather than telling me to teach them, they were taking responsibility to gently elicit my perspective. They were going beyond assumptive empathy. Beautifully, they were also inviting me to learn about them. This is what our workplaces require. This is what the STEM sector requires. This is what we all require. Actively searching for and appreciating both comforting commonalities and deep differences. Collaborations featuring diverse perspectives are more likely to result in innovation, and teams are stronger and more productive when they make gentle inquiry a habit. Learn me. Tell me about a time. Ask people for their stories. We can elevate the people standing before us, and we can elevate the unknown in them. That's where the real power of our communication lies, not in simply telling stories, but in asking people for their stories. Thank you for your stories.